I am going to cover something on partial differential equations, solve partial. Is that fine for related to electromagnetic fields? Is that something which interests you? Yeah, so solving for example Poisson's equations or wave equation, right? Okay, so how many of you know finite element method? Only one, is it? So, and how many of you are exposed to what is called as variational calculus or variational technique? Only one again. So it is going to be a tough task for me for next 1.5 years hours. So anyway, probably I will first, then we have 1.5 hours roughly. So probably what I could do is first I will talk little bit on finite element method itself, and then I'll talk about variational technique, right? So basically, there are various analytical techniques. So for example, the kind of equation that we are trying to solve. See, all of you know Maxwell's equations, right? So many of almost all the electromagnetic phenomena that you see around are governed by Maxwell's equations. And you being mostly from electronics engineering, you will be concerned with mostly the wave equation, is it not? So if you have to solve a wave or Laplace equation, then it is, let us take a first to start with. Yeah, so all of you are familiar with this Poisson's equation, right? So actually, what do you when you see this equation, you know what is del square u, right? d2u by dx square plus right. So u is the potential variable and rho is the volume charge density and epsilon is the permittivity of the medium. So actually this first of all, what does it mean? That means you need to find in a given field domain which is having some source condition. So what is the source term here? Yeah, yeah. So that is the source term and variable is u, and that is dependent variable, is it not? So since this is a maths course for electrical engineering, let us talk in terms of more of maths, right? So u is dependent variable and x, y, z are the independent variables, right? And it is essentially a three-dimensional problem. So actually if you really see, suppose you have a parallel plate capacitor, the simplest example that you can think of for finding out electromagnetic fields. One is of course this parallel plate capacitor, but with maybe if I tell you that these two, this top plate is at 1 volt, bottom plate is at 0 potential, right? And if the geometry is as enclosed there, then it is straightforward problem. You don't require any numerical technique. The electric field intensity inside the parallel plate capacitor anywhere is constant and is equal to 1 over the distance d between the plates. But if I tell you no, this is this I open this two sides and then I say that the problem is, if I really take these are the two plates in 3 dimensions and it is an open bounded problem now. Suddenly the problem becomes too difficult to comprehend because there are it is an unbounded problem and there are, so at the end there will be fringing. So of course here somewhere here along this line, center line, you will be able to calculate by just by simple v by d, same thing it will more or less follow. But as you go away from this center, there are a lot of fringing fields, end effects are there, is it not? And that is why you cannot calculate it by any simple analytical technique. So, you require essentially a numerical technique. So, that is the reason these days numerical techniques are so popular, because practical problems are 3-dimensional in nature, they are multi-material, is it not, and there could be non-linearities. So, you need some numerical techniques to solve. Now, when we actually see this problem, when we say for a parallel plate capacitor without end effects, we say E is equal to V by D. So, this expression we call it as closed form or analytical solution. It is closed form because you exactly know the dependence of the field variable on the source conditions and the geometrical conditions. You know exactly when D is how when D change, how electric field intensity change and all that. So, this is of course the simplest form, but any other little more complicated expression, if you have it, is if it is derived based on analytical technique, then it will have closed form solution. So, you will know exactly how your solution depends on the governing geometrical and material and source properties, exactly you know the relation. Whereas, in case of numerical techniques, when you solve like finite element method and all that, you actually can get solution to complex problems, 3-dimensional problems with non-linearities, with anisotropies and all that, but then you lose insight of dependence of solution on the governing geometrical or source conditions. Do you understand what I am saying, right? So, that means if I calculate the stress, if you express the potential at this point, arbitrary point, as a function of this, you will not be able to get any relation between this distance and this source and whatever, but you will still get good answer, reasonably accurate answer using numerical technique. So, that is the advantage of numerical techniques, although you lose insight of dependence of governing variables on the solution, you still are getting reasonably accurate answer solution, which is not possible by analytical techniques, right. So, that is the first thing. So, finite element method is one of the methods which basically is quite popular and used both in low frequency and high frequency electromagnetics to solve partial differential equations, which basically are derived out of the Maxwell's equations. Now, this if we really now go into the finite element method details. So, let us get into this. Actually, I had another I came here with a with different lecture in mind, but since most of you do not know FEM, there was no point in directly me in talking this variational calculus. So, let us quickly understand basics of finite element method, and if time permitting we will get into variational. So, in finite element method, what you do is you basically discretize the whole geometry into what are small elements which are called as finite elements, right, and then you approximate a given approximate the solution in terms of some polynomial approximation, and then you assemble the whole system of equations that I will explain you how to do that, and then you impose the boundary conditions, because boundary conditions when imposed, then only it will lead to a unique solution, right, and then we will see some more details. So, in computational electromagnetics, there are number of numerical techniques which are used to solve such partial differential equations. So, what we are going to just see is one of those which is called as finite element method, and in finite element method also we are going to see the approach which is called as variational procedure. I will explain you what is variational procedure, and there is something called as Galerkin's method, which is a type of weighted residual approach. Now again, weighted residual you might have studied in some other engineering branch, or when in any other course. So have you studied weighted residual any time? Any one of you? Or method of least squares, right? So something, these are basically all methods of error minimization. Finally, what numerical techniques are, what basically in a class of numerical techniques you assume some solution, and then you basically try to use boundary conditions to minimize the errors at those points. In turn, you try to minimize error at other points of domain also, and then you get the solution. That is the way most of the numerical techniques will work. Now basically here we have a parallel plate capacitor, again a very trivial problem, is it not? Because there is no fringing. So actually this is actually a one dimensional problem, because E is V by D and the electric field intensity is constant everywhere. But I have taken this trivial problem just to explain you the finite element method. So it is best to get FEM understood through this so called trivial example. So here it is, there are no charges, the volume charges within that capacitor plate, right. So the rho term in the Poisson's equation is 0, and that is why your governing equation now is del square phi equal to 0, which is Laplace equation, right. And it is this whole problem is subjected to two boundary conditions. One is top plate is at say 10 volts and bottom plate is say at 0 volt, right. So let us see how we can solve this problem. So first thing is this is what I wanted to start my whole lecture with, the variational procedure. But since many of you are not conversant with FEM, I thought first let me explain FEM and then we will go to this variational as a mathematical tool. So basically this fortunately for us engineers, the fields get distributed in a domain in such a way that under steady state conditions or steady conditions the energy content is minimized, right. So energy is always minimized, and that is that helps us to get to the solution to this variational technique. So in variational procedure what you do is you find out the energy of the system, and that energy you minimize with respect to the potential variables, and you set, when you minimize you will actually differentiate the total energy with respect to each potential variable and equate it to 0. So you will get n set of equations as there are n independent variables, and then you solve that system of equations to get the unknown potential variables. So in short, this is what the method is. So in case of this electrostatic problem, which is governed by this Laplacian field, the functional or the energy expression is half epsilon del phi square d rho. Now what is del phi? Del phi is, so what is gradient of potential? Electric field intensity, is it not? So in effect what it is showing is it is integral of half epsilon E square. Now half epsilon E square has unit of, can somebody tell me what is the unit of half epsilon E square? Yeah. So what is the unit of half epsilon E square? Joules per cubic meter, right. So it is energy density, is it not? What is the unit of half CV square? Joules, is it not? So you have to remember that half CV square is energy, whereas half epsilon E square is the energy density, that is joules per meter cube. So now here if you see, energy is half epsilon del phi square d omega. Now omega here is the area, right. Now actually it should be the volume, is it not? But here since we are doing a two-dimensional analysis, the third dimension is is taken as infinite, or we, in other words we can say the third dimension is we will calculate the field or the solution per meter depth, that means per unit dimension in z direction. So it is effectively it is like d omega into 1, followed. So it is, that's why area into 1, because the z dimension is 1 meter. So otherwise it should have been properly written, it should be dV, that is volume, but since the z dimension is taken as 1 meter, or we calculate our field values for per meter depth, so you can approximate like this. And then as I said, physical significance of the function also, this is called as functional. Functional is basically, it is a function of function, that is called as functional. So, so for us, and here for a single, it is a single dielectric system, because that capacitor is having only one dielectric, whatever you take, it's with a permittivity of relative permittivity of epsilon r. So here the energy minimization and corresponding solution is not influenced by epsilon, is it not? Because everywhere if the permittivity is epsilon, when you calculate the energy, it will be function of permittivity, but that permittivity will come out as common term when you calculate energy for each region of that problem domain, and you sum all the energies, epsilon will come out because it is common. And then when you minimize it to 0, that means you differentiate and minimize to 0, that epsilon will get cancelled. So that is why you need not put that epsilon in the energy expression here, and henceforth in this presentation we will not write epsilon. But you have to remember that when it is a multi-material case, you need to basically include epsilon under the integral sign, because then it will, depending upon the region, there will be epsilon 1, epsilon 2, and it will not come down, come common, and they will influence in general the electric field intensities in various zones of the problem, right. So in finite element method, what we do is we basically divide the whole domain into what are known as elements, and here we will divide it into triangular elements, right. So triangular elements are one of the simplest ones, and it is easier also to explain, that is why I have chosen triangular, but then you can use rectangular, and for 3D you have cubic, tetrahedral and prismatic elements. So this shows that as your geometry is more and more non-uniform, curvy and all that, you need to have smaller and smaller triangular sizes, so that to capture that field variation. So now let us come to this, what we are going to do is, through this capacitor problem we are going to understand this numerical technique called as finite element method from almost A to Z. So at the end of this presentation I am sure you will understand what finite element method is, and in general how to solve any partial differential equation governing an electromagnetic field. So here, now this again, as I told you, we are solving here Poisson's equation, but similar procedure is adopted for solving wave equation, and whether, or even an eigenvalue problem. Suppose you are analyzing waveguides, modes in waveguides, again it is a similar procedure. There of course you are solving an eigenvalue problem, but the procedure remains more or less same. So here now this capacitor problem is divided into how many elements? How many elements are here? Triangular element? 8, is it not? And there are 8 elements, and how many nodes are there in green? 9. So these 9 are called as global node numbers, right. So these green ones 1 to 9 are global node numbers, and those written in circle, blue ones, they are 1, 2, 3, these are the local node numbers for each element, right. And they are connected as shown there. So what we do is, we basically approximate potential in terms of a polynomial expression. So So what we will do is, we will assume the potential distribution in any element as phi is equal to A plus Bx plus Cy. So it is obviously it is a linear approximation, is it not? If it could have been quadratic also, then your expression will be A plus Bx plus Cy plus Dx square plus Exy plus Fy square. So that would be quadratic approximation, but then there will be how many? 6 unknowns to be determined, is it not? Here for each element how many unknowns are there? 3, A, B, C, is it not? So if you can do quadratic also, the mathematical complexity goes up, and you need more computational efforts to solve that, but there are obviously advantages, because if you use quadratic formulation, then the field variable can vary more in a given region. Can you imagine, if it is A plus Bx plus Cy, that means there is only linear variation, but if it is a quadratic, then you can have a curved variation of the field, and actually the fields can be non-uniform in space, is it not? So then how do we understand this is, if you use linear elements and if the field is varying sharply, then you need more number of linear elements, whereas you would need lesser number of quadratic elements. Followed? So it is basically lesser elements of quadratic or more elements of linear. So that choice one has to make. Followed? So now what we will do is, we will start with one element, we will understand how to calculate energy associated with one element, and also form what is known as corresponding element coefficient matrix, which represents the energy of that element, and then we basically find out the energy of the total system, and then minimize it. So that is all about what finite element method is. So if phi is equal to, in general, phi is equal to A plus Bx plus Cy, right? So for all the vertices of that element, I can write phi 1, phi 2 and phi 3 as given there, is it not? Do you all agree? Right? Then you can actually find out ABC as given there. You can actually do mathematical matrix, take inverse and do this. And then what is done is that ABC phi for element is A plus Bx plus Cy, is it not? That's how we started. So now what we'll do is that phi is A plus Bx plus Cy is written as 1xy ABC, is it not? And then 1xy and then ABC you replace by what we have just got in the last slide, right? And then you finally get phi E as summation Ni. Ni is called as step function, I will explain you more about that. Ni phi I E. So effectively what you have done is, earlier in that element how many unknown variables were there? Yeah? No, not really. Actually, in case if it was not finite element method, in any element there are infinite number of unknowns, is it not? There are infinite number of points, and now what we have done is, the energy of that element was a function of all those infinite number of points inside that element, right? Because energy is will depend on electric field intensity at each and every point in that element. So there are infinite number of unknowns even for a single element. So what we have done is that actually we have we have changed that problem from infinite number of variables to finite number of variables. Now what are those finite number of variables now here? Only the nodal potential values, or the potentials at vertices, is it not? So now we have expressed phi at any point within the triangle as a function of the potentials at the vertices, is it not? So this, what this equation 7 tell is, phi at any point xy within that triangular element is nothing but n1 phi 1 plus n2 phi 2 plus n3 phi 3, right? And n1, n2, n3 are given here, and these expressions you will get if you actually expand that inverse, you will get this expression, right? So what we have effectively done is, instead of now this is for one phi is there, then obviously you know what is the expression for energy. Energy is a function of del phi. If you take gradient of this for equation number 7, right, and then half epsilon del phi square is the energy of that element, right. So that energy is now expressed as a function of the values of the 3 nodal potentials, is it not, or 3 potentials at the vertices, right. So effectively now you can say that if we can do this for one element, we can do this for all the elements, and then when we sum all the energies, effectively what you would be doing is we will be able to express the energy of the entire system in terms of vertices of all the triangular elements, right. Whereas the original problem, the energy was function of all the infinite number of points within that capacitor plates. Now we have made that energy to depend only on the potentials at the vertices of the triangles. Is it clear? So one more interesting property is this, that this n1, n2, n3, these are the F functions. So n1 depends, n1 is 1 at node number 1, n1 is 1 at node number 1 and 0 at node number 2 and 3, right. So and del of course is the area of the element. Now this has to be like this, because so let us take this one triangle with node numbers 1, 2 and 3, right. So what it says is this shape function for 1 is 1 at node number 1 and it is 0 at node number 2 and 3, right, and it has to be like that only because phi in general at any point xy inside this triangle is nothing but n1 phi 1 plus n2 phi 2 plus n3 phi 3, right. So when we are talking of phi at 1, right, then it has to be equal to phi 1, is it not, on the right hand side. That means at that node n1 has to be 1 and n2 and n3 have to be 0, right, and it has to be like this only because let us take another element which is contiguous or adjacent element. So this is like 2 with nodal nodes as its vertices as 2, 3, 4, right. So now actually what it says is these properties of these shape functions, n1 and n4 are 0 on segment, which segment, n1 and n4 would be 0 on, the value of n1 and n4 would be 0 on 2, 3, is it not, on segment 2, 3. It should be like that, because if it is not, then at any, that means effectively what we are saying is at any point on this segment 2, 3, the potential value will be decided only by the potentials at 2 and 3 and not by potentials at 1 and 4, and it should be like that, because if it was not so, then what would happen is potential at some arbitrary point here would actually, when it is calculated in this triangle using potential values of 1, 2, 3, would come different as compared to when potential at this point is calculated using these elemental values with potentials at 2, 4 and 3. Is it clear? Right? This is purely maths, nothing, there is no electromagnetics here, but this is a simple logical thing, is it not? So this is the basic thing in finite element method as regards this shape functions are concerned, that you are basically maintaining the continuity of potential when you go from one element to the next element, because potential at any point at the interface is same whether you calculate from element 1 or element 2, and that basically ensures the continuity of potential variable across inter-element boundaries, and that is why the problem does not become mathematically absurd. Otherwise, mathematically the problem would become absurd if actually you get values, potential values at a point in space different if you calculate from different elements point of view. It should not, is it not? So there has to be, for a given problem, geometry, material properties, and given numerical method and given mesh, you should be able to calculate the same value whether you calculate from this way or that way. Otherwise there will be mathematical absurdity. So now it is the next one or two slides are just simple vector calculus and some simplification. So going back to that equation number 7, if I remember the number correctly, the energy associated was equal to half epsilon E square, is it not? And then we said that half epsilon E square. So starting with that equation 7, wherein half epsilon E square was the energy expression. So now E is nothing but del phi, and phi is nothing but this phi is nothing but Ni phi I E, is it not? That is what we calculated. Phi E is summation Ni phi I E, that is N1 phi 1 plus N2 phi 2 plus N3 phi 3, right. So that is substituted there, and then you can when you expand this, so it is like that mod A square is A dot A, is it not? A dot A is mod A square. Do you all agree? Yeah. So then you are using that. So basically this and another thing that is done here is del operator, which was actually in equation 12, it was acting on the whole that bracket, but in equation 13 it is made to act only on on Ni, because n is the one which is function of x and y, is it not? N is the function of x and y, whereas phi I, for a given thing, phi I, they do not depend on x and y. Followed? For that triangular element, those phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, they are not function of x and y, because that is fixed. It is not, although of course when you take the whole domain, in general potential at any point is a function of x and y, but the way we have divided, and for each triangle, now you have those three nodal vertices, the potentials at those 3 points are sort of fixed as those variables. You are not making them vary, they are just variable, and in your mathematical formulation they are not made to vary as a function of x and y, they are just taken as variable, right. And eventually you will see that energy is finally made to vary as a function of this phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, because then when the energy is minimized, right. So del, that's why is made to operate only on n, and then you are expanding this as I just now said, first you are expanding it as you are separately writing the 3 terms phi 1, phi 2, phi 3, and then you use that A dot A is equal to A square. So you are having this dot product of that thing, and then effectively you will get 9 terms when you expand that dot product. Do you agree? And then those so those 9 terms you can express as double summation, I goes from 1 to 3 and j goes from 1 to 3, and then you get this nice expression in terms of equation 16. So you basically get this as you can write the whole that expression nicely by equation 20, where energy associated with one element is phi E transpose A phi E. So A is the element coefficient matrix as given by this 9 3 by 3 elemental matrix in equation 19, whereas each of those A1, A2, A12 up to A33 are given by equation 18. So, for example, A11 will be integral over that elemental area del n1 dot del n1 d omega, and those can be easily calculated as shown in this slide. For example, A11 I just now said it is given by this del n1 dot del n1 d omega. So, del n1 dot del n1 is straightforward because del n1 is this as calculated in expression 22. It is absolutely straightforward because you already know the expression of n1. So, del n1 is simply because anyway first this term is 0, derivative of this term is 0 because there is no variable here x and y. So, del n1 will be y2 minus y3 x hat plus x2 minus x3 into y hat, where x hat and y hat are the unit vectors in x and y direction, is it not? So, what I am trying to say is all these A11 to A33 can be easily calculated because you know all the geometrical coordinates. So, A11 for example is calculated as 1 upon 4 delta, where delta is the area of the triangle, y1 y2 minus y3 square plus x3 minus x2 square, right. So, similarly you can calculate it A12, A13 and all that. So, effectively you get all these entries of this equation 19, that means 3 by 3 matrix is known to you, right. So, then you can actually, so effectively what you have come till now, what you have done, you took only one element, right, and you calculated the energy associated with that element, right. Now, we have to actually continue the procedure and calculate energy for all elements, and so effectively how many matrices will get? Such 3 by 3 matrices, how many will be there? How many elements were there in that capacitor problem? 8 elements, is it not? So, there will be 8 3 by 3 matrices that you would have calculated at this point, yeah. So, I hope you remember that geometry. I will just flash it once more. So, there are 8 elements, is it not here? 8 triangular elements. So, we will calculate by that procedure 8 3 by 3 matrices, right, and then those 8 matrices represent the corresponding electrostatic energy associated with the corresponding elements. So, now what we do is we use basically this global connectivity matrix to basically combine or find the total energy of the system. So, for example, element number 1 is basically has the global node numbers or vertices as 1, 5 and 4, is it not? See, the element number 1 has global number 1, 5 and 4, right. Then element number 2 has another set of node numbers as its vertices and so on. So, what you do is basically our final aim is to form what is called as global stiffness matrix, which represent the total energy of the system, right. So, that actually how you can do it. This is by inspection, but actually if you can write down and sum up, you will get actually this only. This is by intuitive way or by inspection you can write. For example, A1, capital A11, that means global 11 is A1 small a1 1 of element 1 plus A small 11 of element number 2 is obvious because this is global 11, that means self will be, there are, just see, this is 1 of 1 and this is 1 of 2. That is why it is A11 of E1, A11 of E2, right. Similarly, take one more A22. This global 2 is basically on that there are 3 nodes are incident. Node number 2 of 2, 1 of 3 and 1 of 4. So, that is why it is A22 E2, A11 E3 and A11 E4. Is clear? A phi phi, on phi there are 6 nodes because it is common to 6 triangular elements, so it has 6. Effectively, you know how this is, because this phi, node number phi, potential of node number phi will contribute to the energy of all those 6 elements, is it not? So, when you calculate the energy of all those 6 triangular elements, potential at node number phi, global node number phi will be appearing, is it not, in those 6 energy expression. When you add all those 6 energy expressions, so you will get, you know, the potential at phi, that is one of the variables, will be coming common in deciding the energy of those 6 elements and hence the total energy. So, that is why the A phi phi will be eventually will get multiplied by potential at phi, is it not, in that matrix product, and that is why you have 6 elements, 6 terms here corresponding to A phi phi. Similarly, you know, if you take, so we have just now seen all the diagonal terms, you take one off diagonal term A12, that means A12, it is basically, you know, just simply A12 E2 because it is related to node number 2, is it not? Whereas if you take A15, it has it will be decided by A12 of 1 and A13 of 2. Right. So, that is why A15, yeah, A51 is calculated as A21 of E1 plus A31 of E2. So, likewise, you know, you calculate all this, you know, 9 by 9 matrix, wherever there is no connectivity, those elements will be 0. So, for example, here there is no connectivity between, for example, node number 4 and node number 1. So, global A14 will be 0. Is it not? Between node triangle 1 and triangle 4 there is no common node, right. So, that means A14 global would be equal to 0. So, that is why, you know, this matrix, eventual global quotient matrix for a large 3-dimensional problem is very sparse, and you know those sparse solution techniques, I am sure in this course there will be some matrix computation aspect also being covered, is it not? Yeah, because his main focus of this course is linear algebra, is it not? So, so the sparsity techniques are then exploited, because for actual 3-dimensional problem this will be, you know, something like 1 lakh by 1 lakh matrix. When you actually solve a practical 3D problem from an industry or a research problem, the matrices are huge and you cannot you know, solve. In fact, 3D problems cannot be solved by a MATLAB code. The MATLAB code will just give up beyond you know 2-dimensional problem. 2-dimensional problems can be solved by MATLAB, but not 3-dimensional typical. So, now with this you have got this global equation for the energy is now half phi transpose A phi, where phi is nothing but phi 1 to phi 9, those global node numbers followed, and capital this matrix A is this matrix. So, now what you do is this total energy you basically apply a minimization technique. You minimize this total energy as a function of each of those 9 variables, right, that is potentials at those 9 global node numbers, and then you will get 9 equations. Actually, when you differentiate you will get this. It is not absolutely obvious, but you just, you know, go through, you will understand that it will be this way, and then you get A phi equal to 0, but A phi equal to 0, does it have unique solution from linear algebra perspective? Does Ax is equal to 0 have a unique solution in general? Yeah, Ax is equal to no, is it not? Ax is equal to 0 in fact has infinite number of solutions, right. So, what you need is, you need on right hand side you need non-zero thing, that will come only out of boundary conditions. So, when you impose these boundary conditions, that phi is 0 on the bottom plate and phi is equal to 10 on the top plate. So, the corresponding 3 nodes potential is 0 and the other 3 nodes potential is 10. So how many total nodes were there in our system? 9, out of which actually 6 are already defined by corresponding potential. So only the middle 3 nodes there are unknown potentials. So as I told you, this is a very trivial problem and you don't require FEM or any other technique to that to solve that, but just for sake of understanding I have taken this problem. So out of 9 you have already 6 potentials are known, which is not so in practical case. In actual practical problems, very few potentials at very few nodes are known and potentials at remaining large number of nodes is unknown. So when you impose the boundary conditions, that 9 by 9 matrix basically reduces to a 3 by 3 matrix, is it not? And then you will get, when you do that matrix manipulation, you will get only those middle 3 rows and the corresponding elements. So you will be left with these 3 equations. See, this 10 here is coming because one of the potential is 10. If the potential was something different, this would have been different. So when you impose the boundary condition and reduce the 9 by 9 system to a 3 by 3, you will get this, and then you can now everything is known because all these capital A 4, 7, 4, 8 and all that is known. So you can easily calculate 5, 3, 1, that are the unknown potentials. So alternatively, you of course can still retain 9 by 9 and do that, but that is not required. So this is what the finite element method is, right? So now having understood this, I will now go to the, so do you have some questions on this? Then I will quickly go through the main topic which I wanted to cover. Any doubts you have? So either you have understood fully or not understood anything, one of the two. So I hope you have more or less understood things. So let us go to the this variational technique, and this we have already seen now. So again there are two approaches, one is the variational and other is the weighted residual. So we are going to see what is called as variational approach because it is more close to the principle of some natural principle, that is minimization of energy, whereas weighted residual methods basically they are minimizing the errors, right. So they are not that close to any physical principle as the variational or Rayleigh-Ritz method, those class of methods are. So here what we are doing is, now always remember the corresponding, when we say what is this functional. So what was the functional in our previous example? In this previous example, what was the functional? Yeah, 1/2 epsilon, very good. This was our functional because it is the energy of that element, and summation of over all elements is basically the total energy, right. So this is basically the functional. Now what is functional is a function of functions, right. Now function of function, what is function here? Function is basically nothing but whatever is in the integral sign is a function, and when you are integrating that function, it is like a function of function. So it is called as functional in it is termed as functional in variational calculus. So functional is I y. Now actually see here it is like y is potential. So here x, earlier that capacitor problem, how many independent variables were there? No, it was a 2-dimensional problem, no? So there were only 2 independent variables, x and y, is it not? And potential was dependent variable. Here there is only one dependent variable and one independent variable. So independent variable, that means the geometrical variable is only x and y is dependent variable. So y here is nothing but what? In capacitor problem, y is what? Yeah? Yes, madam? No. Potential. Y is potential. So here don't get confused, this y is the potential. Because potential is the dependent variable. Now what you said, distance between the two plates is not a dependent variable, it is fixed, right? So y here is the potential in the whole domain, and it is a function of x, so it is a one dimensional problem, right? And with boundary conditions, y a is equal to a and y b equal to b, that means potential at the first end point, because this is a one dimensional problem, so it will have two end points, is it not? One dimensional problem will have two boundary points. So y of a, potential at one end point is say a, and potential at another end point is b. These are the two boundary conditions. So now this figure will explain you all. And this is the most important figure in this presentation. Now you can see here is y versus x, I of y. So this is, what is I? I is the total, I is representing the energy. So capital I is the energy. That energy is a function of y. What is y? Potential values, right? So I is the total energy, y is the potential variable, is equal to fxy y dash dx from integral a to b. So x is nothing but, now you take that half epsilon e square, you relate it to that. So there you can see it was a function of, that energy was a function of del v square, that means derivative of potential with respect to x. So that is what here, which term is in place of x y y dash, which is the term which is same as del v. Del v is x, y or y dash? Y dash, is it not? Because potential I said is y. So derivative del v will be represented by y dash there. Effectively that means your energy is a function of y dash. So here it is in general written as x y y dash, but actually we have it as a function of only y dash in our case. But in general it could be function of both, all three, x, y, y dash. Is clear? Okay, and with boundary condition, potential at small a is a and potential at the other endpoint b is capital B, right? Okay, now let us go. So now here this y as it is plotted as y as a function of x, right? So here you can see that this is the variational technique. So it is variational symbol del, it is written as different and daba, right? So variational symbol del and corresponding del y for dx is equal to 0. That means what we are doing is, this is the say one dimensional geometry between a and b. So your domain is from a to b, right? And your problem definition is what? You have to find the potential distribution between points a and b, which such that the energy is minimized, because potentials will be distributed between these points a and b at every point, such that the total energy content is minimized, right? So how do you do that? What you do is, you also know that y of a and y at b, they are fixed. So that is why here potential at this point and this point is fixed, right? And what we are varying now is this potential at every other point, followed. That means so this anyway potential is fixed. Now the potential distribution can be this, or can be this, or maybe like this, you don't know. So we have to find out that potential distribution which minimizes the energy, followed. That means effectively what you are doing is, at each x what you are doing is, you are varying y, but you are keeping that point. When you are varying y, you are keeping x as fixed. At that x you are varying y. So it is not like it is not dy by dx. When you say dy by dx, what you are doing is, you are actually, when you are calculating dy by dx, what you do is you vary x and see how much is y changing, and then you call this as slope. So it is like dy by dx, is it not? So both, as you change x, you are saying what is the change in y, and then you calculate dy by dx. Whereas here, at each x, you are actually changing y, which is potential here, and you are calculating, the corresponding variation in y, and that is called what is called as variational technique. So that's why it is first, the first line, del y for dx del x is equal to 0, right? So the difference between this analogous, go to the last line first. We generally know the total differential df is da by f by da by x into dx, da by f plus da by y into dy, plus da by f by da by z into dz, is it not? Last time thing you just say, but do you agree? But here you see del f is not function of dx. See here why it is, the variables here are x, y and y dash, because we have taken f is as a function of x, y and y dash. F is function of x, y, y dash. So the total differential in our general mathematical terms, what we have, we know very well, when f, total differential of f, when f is a function of x, y and y dash, will be this. Do you all agree? But del f will not have this term, because there is no variation in x, right? So effectively, as I have said, I told you, you are basically, this potential variation as a function of x, you are varying with boundary conditions same. There it is tied to those potentials, because those potentials are known. So these potentials are known respectively, whatever that capital A and capital B. Between these 2 points, you are varying this potential as you wish, and you are, every time you are checking whether you will calculate the energy. By brute force, if you have to do like this. You take all the infinite combinations, calculate those infinite number of energy values, whichever is the minimum, that actually is the solution. Followed? Right? So now going further, so now here I was a function of potential. That means each of these curves will represent one I, is it not? So whichever comes minimum, that Iy equal to 0. So that is what is written here. Now finally see, this curve is I versus y. Now y here is not geometrical variable, y is what? Potential. Now, and actually this, what is shown, this, like, this is a multi-dimensional bowl. Do you understand? Actually here it is y, but actually really speaking, if here it is only y, single potential variable. But you can imagine, if it is a 2-dimension also, you can imagine. But if it is 3 variables are there, you cannot imagine this. It is only, you can express only in mathematics. Do you agree? So here, since it is I is a function of only y, so you will have this kind of variation. And what is this y and y plus h? That means now this, each of this y is a set of y, is it not? That means this y, when it is showing minimum there, that is minimum, that will correspond to one of such curves, is it not? But there will be many such possibilities. So basically here what you are saying is there are so many y's. So when you say y here, y is a vector in the sense it has got potential values of all those points between those two endpoints. So it is not a single potential there, it is a set of values. Each y there is a set of values. Follow what I am saying? Is it clear to everybody? Well, this is the main thing in variational. That means this one variation of potential, what is shown here, is for one set of potential values, right? If you take another set of potential values, it will be something different, right? So that is giving you this I versus Y. So each Y here is the set of potential values, of those for those points in the domain. Now this is little maths. So minimum value of functional is del I is equal to, now I is equal to I, that is I Y plus H minus I Y. Y plus H, now just see here what is H. H is the vertical. Now see what is written here, del Y is Hx. Variation in Y, now this vertical thing is a function of x, is it not? Because this H, here it is, the height is so much, at this H, at this x, the height is more. So that is why this del Y is a function of Hx, because at various x values, the height of that variation is different, and that is called as H, that is denoted by H or Hx, right. So effectively then what you are doing is you are varying Hx at every point, at every x, and then actually you will see when you vary Hx at every point, you will get different sets of Y values or potential values, and one of those infinite combinations of those potentials, you will get minimum. That now you have to mathematically express, and that can be nicely expressed by using this del I is equal to I Y plus H minus I Y, and when del I equal to 0 at that bottom point, it will tend to 0, is it not? When you change at that point H, you are not going to get much change in total energy, and that is the minimum point, right? Is it understood this point? The very first equation, I Y plus H minus I Y is equal to 0 when it is minimum.
It is similar to, sir, increment of a function.
Yeah, it is increment of function. It is like when you close to minimum, if you just, what is that minimum point? When you go either this way or this way, there is hardly any change in that minimum. That means that is the minimum point. Whereas here, if you see the change is high. Yeah. So now this is simple maths. I Y plus H is nothing but, what is I Y plus H? It is f, because what was I? It was f of x y integral f x y y dash. So I Y plus H will be f x y plus H y dash plus H dash. See, it is not x plus H because x is fixed, because it is a variational, is it not? Minus integral a to b, and is the I Y, original y, I Y. Actually you just take the first, use Taylor series. What is finally Taylor series is like f x plus H is equal to f x minus H f dash x, is it not? And that H f dash x is the first Taylor series term. So the first, when you expand this first term here, this when you expand, what is going to get is that first term is going to get cancelled with this term, say this term here. Do you agree? Is it not? And then what will remain is that in our Taylor series, H f dash x is nothing but these two terms in this expression. Here of course there are two terms, because there are here two things, y plus h and y dash plus h dash. That is why there are two terms here. And then you integrate by parts, and I will not this is purely maths, so you go through that, and then if you have doubts, you can check with me later. But as now, after simplifying, and then you impose the boundary conditions that HA is equal to HB is equal to 0, because at the two end points HA is 0, is it not? Do you all agree? Because that is a fix, there is no vertical variation, because H stands for the vertical variation. So H of x is 0 at the two end points. So that is why you are imposing that boundary condition that HA is equal to HB equal to 0, and then finally you get this nice expression of del I is equal to this, and when del I to vanish, because that is the minimum condition, energy minimum condition, this integrand should be 0. So then this is what we get, and this is called as Euler-Lagrange equation. This I am sure you must have. So these are proper good topic as part of this course, variational technique and Euler-Lagrange equation. I thought it is important for you to understand this. So at some point in your academic career you may get across this kind of thing. So the necessary condition for functional to have extremum is that given function must satisfy Euler-Lagrange equation. See, given function f, because f is the function in this equation, f is the function, I is the functional, which is representing the energy. So given function f should satisfy what is known as Euler-Lagrange equation. Okay, so this is for one dependent and one independent variable. Now for two dependent and three independent variables and all that, all these equations are there. I will end my lecture with this one example, so that you will be able to realize or correlate to a commonly encountered partial differential equation. Again, we again take again see this f for Poisson's equation is half phi x square plus phi y square minus f x y phi. Do you agree? Because see here, yeah, so it is like half, and this is del v square. When it is a two dimensional problem, it will basically have two terms, is it not? Derivative with respect to x, derivative with respect to, that means del v, that will be del v by dx square plus del v by dy square. So that is nothing but this phi x square plus phi y square. Do you agree? When you expand that del v square mod, it is basically what you are going to get is del v by del x square plus del v by del y square. Is it not? Because what is del v? Del ve by dx x hat plus del v by del y y hat, and what is then mod? Mod of del v will be equal to do you agree? And that is how. So del v square will be simply del v by dx square plus del v by dy square. So that is nothing but effectively in this slide, it is nothing but it is equivalent to phi x square plus phi y square, where here x subscript x is derivative with respect to x. That is what it is here, phi x and phi y. Here it is del v by del x square. Is it okay now? Are you able to correlate? Right. So now actually you see, and here when simply it was Laplace equation, f would have been just this, half del v square. But now since you have a Poisson's equation and right hand side you have f, which is a source. What is f there? Is rho upon epsilon, minus rho upon epsilon in Poisson's equation, right? So that actually is here given by the corresponding function for that thing can be derived as minus f phi, right? And then you can actually the Euler-Lagrange equation for two independent variables x y is as given there, right? So here, so this is Euler-Lagrange equation for two independent variables, and now you actually substitute f here. This expression of f you substitute in this f equation 2, you will get, simply you will get this. I will just show you this one term. For example, df dabba f by dabba phi will be simply nothing but minus fxy, is it not? df by d phi will be simply minus fxy, that is why it is coming as minus fxy, and this term half phi x square plus phi y square, when you substitute it here, you will get phi xx plus phi yy, and that phi xx plus phi yy, that means double derivative with respect to x and y, that is nothing but del phi square. So you get del phi square is equal to minus fxy. So this is nothing but Poisson's equation, right? So that means solving Poisson's equation is equivalent to extremizing this functional, because when the extremization of that functional occurs when you solve Euler-Lagrange equation, because that is what we did is here, is it not? When we did all this, we extremized this, and finally when we extremize this functional, we got this Euler-Lagrange equation. That means minimization, when you do minimization, Euler-Lagrange equation results. So that means here also we are doing, when we are actually substituting in equation number 2, we are minimizing. Minimization leads to Poisson's equation. So effectively that means when we minimize that given functional, we are able to get to the solution of the Poisson's equation, right. So this is called as variational technique. That means the crux of the matter is that you have to find the functional, such functional for a given PDE. Now many of you are from electronic stream, so let us see what is the functional for homogeneous wave equation. For example, see, wave equation is del square phi plus k square phi equal to 0, where k is the wave number. So the corresponding functional is del phi square minus k square phi square, or when it is in terms of, when it is wrote in terms of in time domain, you get functional like this. And similarly for inhomogeneous wave, so when for example source is there, for example at the antenna, when you are actually solving the fields at the antenna, then there will be source, is it not? So when the source is there, you have this minus f there, and then you will get, like you had in the previous example also, you had that half, actually when you multiply both sides, twice f, and this will become twice f xy, is it not? The similar thing is coming here, twice f phi. So whenever there is a source term, you get additional that twice f into phi kind of term. So what I wanted to tell in this lecture was that this variational technique is a very powerful technique in applied mathematics to this solution of partial differential equations. And although we have a lot of commercial softwares these days, finite element method and all that, and you don't know how it is doing, what it is doing inside, but inside that all those softwares, the basic thing is this. So if you know this basic theory, you will be able to appreciate and understand more how the commercial softwares are giving you the required field solutions in a particular way. So I think with this, it's just exact 5:30. So I would like to stop.